Hello and welcome to episode 129 of the Meet the Farmers podcast. I'm your host, Ben Eagle. Apologies for the massive delay since the last episode. That was not expected. I've been away and just crazy busy with other projects, and all of a sudden, a month has gone by. But today, however, I'm really pleased to be back, and I'm here with first generation Cambridgeshire sheep farmer, although he does have deeper farming heritage, and Yellow Welly's ambassador, Matt Stiles. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be on.
Yeah, really, really good to have you.
Like you say, it's been a while.
It has been, but yeah, we're back now. Tell us about your part of the world first of all. Because you're from the fens. What part of the fens are you from?
Yeah, so we're sort of on the outskirts of like South Lincolnshire, Peterborough, that area of the fens.
Yep.
And yeah, we cover our little patch, if you like, and it's sometimes difficult to get away from that patch very often. I'd like to get away more often, but I don't get a chance.
Yeah. And you so you grew up as a farmer's son on a 300-acre arable farm.
Yes.
Tell us about your life growing up and that sort of time.
Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't. It was predominantly arable, but we did actually have a very small sheep flock back when I was very young. Only up till I would have been. Well, I was born in '94, and foot and mouth was 2001.
Yeah, 01. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that foot and mouth basically just killed off the sheep flock. They decided to pack it in.
Okay.
So I would have been 6 or 7 years old. So I have vague memories of early childhood with the sheep flock, but they just, and then it was just arable farming. So it was your very typical childhood on an arable farm. It was all get on tractors as soon as you possibly can reach the pedals. And we used to have, for years, you always had a contract harvester come in, which made things interesting because obviously the first job that really you get given as a sort of a young teenager is we go and do the corn carting.
Yep.
And we had this really old guy used to come every year and do our combining, and getting shouted at by him for being in the wrong place. Oh, you to be over here, come on. Yeah. So that was a baptism of fire at about 13 years old.
Amazing. And what's the story with the farm now?
At home farm?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Dad still runs it. He's now, what's he this year? 64, I think. Although apparently he's thinking about retirement, but what that means, I have no idea. But it's one of those where it's like it's a typical family farm setting where not everyone always agrees about everything and gets along about everything.
Yep.
And from a very early age, from I was about 18, it was made quite clear to me that there wasn't a huge amount that there was for me to do there, and that I would be better off going out into the world and doing something else, which obviously I didn't really do because I went into farming.
Okay. Yep.
But I don't know. I've just never really been back.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, like I visit them. It's one of those where, you know, some people it works really well for, and other people it doesn't. And I'm just in that bracket of kind of what the future holds for that. I really don't know. It's a typical sort of farm succession thing where if it's ever mentioned, it just sort of gets hushed up, and we don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really difficult chat, isn't it? And it's actually what I'm going through the succession process with all my family at the moment, and we're trying to sort of have as many sort of discussions about it as possible at the moment, just kept putting it out in the open. But it's one of those unsaid things in many farming families, isn't it?
Yeah, and unfortunately, in some families, it wants to remain unsaid.
Yeah,
which, you know, when you're my age and doing what I'm doing now, I want to have a plan.
Yeah.
Exactly. I want to know where I'm going to be in 5-10 years time. I know where I want to be, but I need to know, like, the ins and outs of that. And if no one's willing to talk about it and make a plan, well, I'll make my own plan.
Yeah,
I haven't got time. I haven't got time to wait till I'm 45 before Dad finally hangs up his reins and says, "Here's the farm, son."
Yeah.
So, oh, thanks, Dad. You know, basically half my life is already gone.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I mean, I assume that you've always wanted to work in farming, but I mean, have you always wanted to run your own business?
No, not at all. No.
Okay.
And actually, to be fair, when I was a teenager, I didn't even want to go into farming.
Okay.
I had my heart set on being a famous musician.
Oh, really?
I was really into music. I used to do gigs, played in a band.
Cool.
I was really into all that, and like drama, and I was part of an amateur dramatics group.
Brilliant.
I travelled around, did a few stage shows and stuff, like musicals, and yeah, I was into all of that. And then I got to about 17 and just thought, I don't know what I thought really. I remember thinking, I don't really want to do this for the rest of my life. This isn't actually. I think part of it was I was spending a lot of time indoors in a dark theatre rehearsing a play whilst it was a beautiful summer's day outside.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'd rather do something where I'm outside more often.
Yeah.
Which even now, in the darkest depths of the most horrible day of winter, I would still rather be outside than I would inside. And I think I was always the same as a child. I'd always rather would have been outside playing than inside playing. And I think I just maybe lost sight of that a little bit in my teenage years, and then suddenly reverted back to that, because I'd always wanted to be a farmer when I was young. It was only when I was a teenager I had other ideas about what I might do with my life for about 6 years.
Yeah, rebelled against what you maybe thought that you should do. Yeah,
a bit of a teenage rebellion, perhaps. But when I was like 6 or 7 years old, probably up to about 10 or 11 years old. Yeah, all I wanted to do was be a farmer.
Okay.
I mean, it was the typical child who would rather stare out of the classroom window at the tractor going by than I would listen to what was going on, actually what the teacher was trying to tell me or teach me.
Yeah.
And I got shouted at quite regularly for staring out of the window at something going on, especially at my primary school, because the primary school was a private school, and they had a golf course as part of the sort of estate that the school sat in.
Yeah.
So of course some of the classrooms backed onto the golf course, and of course there'd be mowers buzzing around on the golf course, and they were far more interesting in learning German or whatever they were trying to teach us. When I was ever sat in those classrooms that backed onto the golf course, I'd always be much more looking over my shoulder at the golf buggies going round than paying attention.
And you married your wife Floss in your early 20s.
Very early.
Where and when did you meet?
Well, it was I don't want to say the typical sort of young farming marriage, but we did meet in young farming.
Of course.
And I was, how old was I when we met? Either 18/19.
Okay.
When we first met, and I think we sort of knew each other socially for about a year. And we were actually both with other people. She was with someone else, I was with someone else. And then sort of one thing led to another.
Yep. And
we just started dating and just sort of hit it off from the get-go, and very quickly it sort of accelerated to, will you marry me and let's start our lives together and move out and move to Oxfordshire, which is what we did.
Okay.
Within about 6 months of being together, we'd started living together. We were engaged. We'd moved out to Oxfordshire, 2.5 hours away from Suffolk.
Okay. So how long were you out there for?
About 6 months, I think. I'd got ideas about what I wanted to do, and that job didn't really. There was nothing wrong with the job really. And to be fair, looking back, I probably should have stayed there a bit longer, because it was a good job. But I was sort of, I don't know. I had not a clear idea of where I wanted my career to go, because basically from there I had a succession of very short-term jobs and house moves, and it was just a very chaotic sort of 4 years basically of loads of different career changes, and a lot of it was all based around tractor driving and arable work. But there was I changed jobs probably more than most people do.
Okay. And when did you settle on the sheep?
Well, the sheep came along. Well, basically, I was. If we wind back 5 years to the year I got married, so I was 21. We were back in Suffolk. I'd had a job on a cattle and arable farm, and I did about a year, and I was reasonably happy there. And it was the year we just got married. But then they decided that they wanted to make me redundant right before Christmas.
Oh no.
Which was really nice.
That's a fun time of year, isn't it? As always.
Yeah. And a fun time of year to suddenly find another job. So I picked up this job with this company in Cambridgeshire, and they had quite a large arable farm as well as like a civils engineering contracting business as well. And they said, well, it'd be a bit of both, a bit of arable farming and contracting work, but there won't be as much contracting work as arable farming. I was like, I need a job. It's going to pay well. It comes with a house, I just leapt at it, because it literally within about 2 weeks of getting the redundancy, I'd already got another job. So I was happy that pre-Christmas I'd managed to find employment. And I did about 2.5 years there. And it sort of became the sort of place that you were just tied to always being at work.
Okay.
And it was great. I was making a lot of money, but I never had any time to spend it.
Yeah.
It was one of those, and we'd already kind of had ideas that we wanted to maybe start our own sheep flock, and we couldn't find any land to rent around that area, that part of Cambridgeshire. And I was working too much anyway to really warrant the time to do both, like we do now. So I decided to downscale a little bit in terms of the enterprise that I was working for, because where I'm at now is only about 1,500 acres of just an arable farm. So in the winter time, there isn't a lot going on. And even in the summer, we're only busy for a couple of weeks, a month or two, and that's kind of it. So it's not too bad. And basically where we are in the fens, we've managed to pick up more land just through word of mouth, a lot of it. So it kind of all stemmed from that, and that was about 3 years ago now that we first started. So we'd already had ideas about wanting to get sheep, and then we moved, found some land. A friend of ours was selling some of her flock, so we said, all right, we'll buy some sheep from you. We literally started off with 7 and a wether, who we still have the wether,
Great.
and a couple of those original ewes are still in the breeding flock as well.
Brilliant.
And that's kind of just where it started from. And it was originally, it was just going to be a few sheep, and that was kind of it. And it very quickly became an idea that we wanted our own business. That sort of stemmed from wanting to sell our lamb directly. So we do all of our lamb in meat boxes that at the moment, we get someone else to butcher, and then we sell it direct to customers. And actually, that's in 2 years, that's now working out so well that we're pretty much sold out every time we have lamb available.
Fantastic.
So that's kind of how well that's going. And it's been a massively fast progression from like 7 sheep to now. What we're putting to the tup this year, 56 ewes we're putting to the tup this year, which is not massive compared to some people, but where we started from, it's
absolutely
it's a massive leap.
Huge progress in your heads. And you're mostly cleans and herdwicks, I think I read. There's sort of a mix of clins and there's a few Welsh mules in there as well, which to be fair are really nice ewes as well. But they all run with our Clun tup. So we pretty much run everything pure. So we've got a Herdwick tup for the Herdwick ewes, and we've got a Clun tup for the Clun ewes.
So we don't crossbreed anything,
Okay.
which for us at the moment is working out really well. The Herdwicks we take through to be more like hogget lamb, as opposed to prime lamb.
Yep.
And pretty much all the cluns we managed to sell off as fat lambs. So, and we're not pressuring ourselves to get them turned around really quick. We're much more focused on it being a sort of a slower growth period, and in that we're perhaps producing a higher quality product.
Okay.
Like the stuff that we had last year, we managed to get some stubble turnips in with a local arable farmer.
Okay.
And we fattened about, I can't remember how many lambs we had on there, 15 or 20 lambs that we had left, 15 I think. And we had them on the stubble turnips over winter, and I think I sent them off at the beginning of February.
Yep.
And everybody that we sold that lamb to came back to us and said, this lamb is fantastic, it's the most tasty lamb we've ever had.
Yeah.
And I went, okay, well, we're doing something right then.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was going to ask, what do you feed? Yeah, what are you feeding during the winter? Are you supplementing them with anything? But you're able to actually find sufficient land to either fodder meat or stubble turnip or something like that.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of farmers would look at what we do and say we have way too much land for the amount of stock that we have.
Okay.
But that allows us to, this summer we cut some of it for hay. We probably cut, what do we cut? 35 acres for hay. So, and that's providing us with grazing. We haven't touched that since, I tell a lie, but 10 acres of it the lambs are on currently, but 25 acres, 5 acres of it there's going to be a tupping group on, and the other 20 acres the ewes will go on once they've finished with the tup in, probably after Christmas. They'll go on that through January, February. Yep. And that grass has been left since it was cut for hay in August. So in terms of grass management, we're always putting quite a good bit of fresh green grass in front of them pretty much all year, which does mean our ewes are in very good condition.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Almost a little bit too much. But that's probably more in the case of some of the ones that had twins and singles. Some of the ones that had twins and triplets are, more normal sized, but some of the ones that had singles are a little bit too big. But with the problem we have is time, and it's having the time to say, all right, well, I want to split them fatter ones off and put them on a bit less grass. It's like we just run everything. We try and run things. Well, like I say, at tupping time, we're going to have a Herdwick tupping group, and we're going to have 2 Clun tupping groups because we're actually keeping back some of our ewe lambs this year.
Okay.
So, and I'm going to tup ewe lambs and see how I get on.
Okay. So, what's your plan for the future of that side of the business, and what do you see are the biggest challenges at the moment?
Well, plans for where we go with this at the moment, we're actively applying for tenancies, farm tenancies, which is a highly competitive game, really. And there's nothing wrong that we're doing. We're just one of about 30 people that apply for each farm, and it can only go to one person. So that's one element of what we're trying to do. My other thought is that I wouldn't be adverse to some sort of share farming agreement as we keep building our business and building our land coverage, that if I could find a farmer that was willing to give us an opportunity to, say, expand our business more, then that would almost be as an equal opportunity as just having our own holding. Plus you're kind of working with somebody then, rather than having the onus just be on you. Which from a risk management point of view, I think I'd rather maybe have another business partner than just it all be on me and Floss. But it depends. You don't know what opportunity is going to come up around the corner. We're just trying to set ourselves up for that by saying, look, we're already running a successful lamb meat box running on this much land for this many years. We've got landlord references. And that's kind of, at the moment, what we're focused on is just putting ourselves in the best position for when an opportunity does come along, that we're able to take it, rather than floundering and going, oh, we weren't ready for this, and we're just trying to be as prepared as we possibly can. And that's why, especially this year, we've tried to say yes to as many opportunities as we can. Like, I've taken on a mentor from the British Grassland Society.
Okay.
And he's hopefully going to help us with, because we're predominantly, we're just all outdoor. We lamb outdoor, they outwinter on, well, this year it will just be grass, because we didn't actually get any turnips in this year because it was so dry in September, and with the late harvest, I just didn't manage to get them in.
Yeah.
So we're trialing it this year with, it's just going to be grass to overwinter on, which, you know, we've got more grass this year, so we should be in a better position. I do buy a couple of ton of fodder beet from a local farmer to feed, usually the 3 weeks prior to lambing, when the sheep need the most energy. And we've actually bought a shredder this year, so that should work. It will be feeding shredded beet as opposed to whole beet, so hopefully they'll get on quite, but they seem to get on really well on it. And we haven't had any go down with loss of energy pre-lambing so far. So fingers crossed that continues. And I think that part of that is being able to keep that body condition score good through the winter, and being able to keep enough condition on them so that when they get to that 2 to 3 week period pre-lambing, that they're not already depleted of energy. They've still got a good amount of reserve in their, you know, fat storage in the body to really put that energy into growing good lambs. And from what we've seen, what we lambed this year, we had some good sized lambs, sorry, rather. One or two, maybe a little bit too big. Needed a little bit of assistance, which is always interesting in an outdoor system.
Absolutely.
Trying to provide assistance to something. The biggest challenge is catching them.
Yep. Use that determined to, nope, I'm not. Yeah, you're not going to give me any help anyway.
No. Usually round them up into a corner and then just. I tell you what, the best thing we've probably ever purchased for that is our New Zealand crook.
Okay.
We've got one of those that's got the foot clasp on it.
Yeah.
So if you can hook a back leg, they can't get away from you because it clamps onto the foot. So that's honestly the best thing we ever bought for catching sheep. I wish we had a dog that would catch sheep, but you need a really confident dog, from what I've been told, that will capture you. So with our dogs, they're great rounding up and herding dogs, but in terms of confidence for catching, we haven't quite got the dog for that yet. We might do one day, but you know, every dog's different. Speaking of which, we now have 5 border collies.
Wow.
So we're outnumbered for dogs to sheep, put it that way.
You're on the upper hand. I was on a YFC Agri webinar the other night on the future of ag and all the various challenges there are at the moment. And I mean, it is quite a challenging time. I'm interested in your view on what you think it's like for new entrants and younger farmers at the moment. I mean, is there more opportunity? What are the challenges?
I think from my experience, there's opportunity out there. Whether there's enough of it, because like I say, everything that I've gone through has been very competitive. There's been a lot of competition for it, and I think that's partly because and this is not just me saying this is from research that I've read and spoken to other people about, that if you wind back the clock even just 10 years, agriculture wasn't seen as a very forthcoming career choice to take as a young person, and there was a bit of a lapse in people coming through into the sector, certainly through like the 90s and the early 2000s, when the price crash and foot and mouth and all these other things, I think, just put a lot of people off. Whereas now there seems to be a real buzz, especially with like young people, college, you know, ag colleges now have got more applicants and students than like ever before. So that to me tells me that people are suddenly seeing perhaps a change in the way that agriculture's going, and maybe more opportunity in the wider agricultural area. You've got all this, you've got food business and all these other agribusiness type models that are not just farming. I do think we obviously still need some people to do the farmy bit, and from what I've seen, there are people that come into it that maybe haven't got a background in it and do really well, and will stick it. But there's a lot of people that will do it for, say, 3 to 5 years, and then will either move on to do something that's not farming, for actual practical farming, but is still involved in agriculture. Because you and I both know the farming bit is bloody hard work.
Exactly.
And it's constant. It never lets up. It's hard work this year. Well, it's going to probably be even harder work next year. And then what about the following year? Well, you don't know it could be any. And like you said, there's always so many challenges. And I mean, I always fall back to the old adage of, well, people are always going to need to eat. So there's always going to be a need for farmers.
Yeah.
And I look at what we're trying to do and what we're trying to set up. And I know part of that is just for me as, my personal ambitions of what I want to do with my life. But a wider element of what I'm trying to do is my biggest thing is provide a sustainable product. And obviously that's a big buzzword at the moment, sustainability and all these things. Excuse me. And I look at what we're doing and I go, I can't make my product any more sustainable than what it is, unless my abattoir was closer to me. It travels, my lamb is born in that field. It spends its life in that field grazing grass, which is sequestering carbon from the atmosphere. It's growing wool, which sequesters carbon from the atmosphere. It travels 20 miles to the abattoir, and then it gets delivered within 5 miles of where it was born, as a finished product on your plate. We deliver cuts of meat, that's it. It's boxed lamb. And it's like, I can't get it any more sustainable than that. So that's kind of, in a wider picture, what I'm really trying to push forward in like the next 10 to 20 years, because I think that's going to be a big part of where food and farming is going. And you can already see that that's happening with the rise of the popularity of like farm shops and things. There's a lot more of them now than there ever was, and they're hugely popular. If they're in a prime location, they're packed out every weekend with people, especially if they do, people offer like entertainment bits as part of, children's playthings, and that's people can make a bit more of a day of going to the farm shop.
Yeah, I was just going to add in as well, especially if your name's Jeremy Clarkson as well. yeah,
especially if you happen to have Diddley Farm Squat, or Diddley Squat Farm rather.
Yeah. I was in the Cotswolds a couple of weeks ago, and I thought, I'll just call by because it was on the way, and I've never seen a queue like that for a farm shop ever. It was absolutely mad.
It's crazy, isn't it? And it's like that every day.
Yeah,
every single day. And I don't get me wrong, he's managed to have a lot of free advertising from, let's face it, his own TV show.
It does help.
It does help. But yeah, I mean, Christ, what Jeremy Clarkson has done for farming in, showcasing some of the real life problems, and I think it was very poignant of them to sit down at the end of it and work out all his costs, which don't get me wrong was not that realistic, but to sit down and work all his costs, all what money he'd made, and then at the bottom of it, he said his profit was £140 for a year's work. And it's like, okay, that's not completely realistic, but it suddenly, I think it gave the general public that may have never had any understanding of a farm business, a sudden realization of, actually, there are a lot of farmers that are very close to that breadline, very close. And, it's very easy to suddenly go into the minus bit. We're not always in the plus bit driving nice Range Rovers. You know, they're generally actually probably not, in my view, like proper farmers. You know, they're your, excuse me, I'm gonna have to drink.
That's okay.
They're your sort of, you know, your gentleman farmers that are more just, well, I own an estate, and you know, I have men do the work for me, and that's kind of, and there's nothing wrong with that. Well done to them for inheriting a large estate from daddy or whatever. But you know what I mean? Like, it's the farmers that I'm really invested in, as I see that's going to be the future of where our food should come from. I have quite strong views on the fact that we import so much food and where it comes from, and yet we're essentially, in terms of like climate change, we're faffing around with the idea that, well, we need to cut back on the cow numbers. Too many cows polluting the planet. It's like, yeah, but we're importing all our food from Brazil. Like, how is that not polluting the planet? But we won't talk about that because, you know, nobody wants to talk about that side of it. But, you know, definitely have to cut back on your cows. Sorry, mate. Those cows that are just grazing that grass, they're terribly bad for pollution. What about that plane that you just flew those bananas in, or avocados from wherever? And when you actually look into these things, it's just the figures are just scary. And, you know, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of reasons why as a species we're sort of polluting the planet, but certainly travel is one of those things.
Yeah, that's bizarre. I might make a podcast for Cart Consulting, the dairy consultancy. And this morning we were just discussing, I mean, the fact that certainly lockdown and as a result of other factors as well, cheese consumption has gone up dramatically in the last year to 18 months. And yet,
yeah, I had heard that.
And yet actually I mean, certainly the spot price of milk is going up. The actual farm gate price is roughly where it's always been. Certainly when my dad was a dairy farmer. But the number of herd sales that are going on currently is quite terrifying. It's been something like the industry as a whole is declining again.
Yeah, I was going to say it's been something like a 15% decline in the number of dairy farmers in the UK in the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, it's slowly, it is slowly going. Although number of cows is staying fairly solid. But anyway, that's going off point. What was my next question? This one. So you said in a recent blog post, I quote, the biggest piece of advice I could give to anyone thinking of starting out in farming is to get good at problem solving. It's a skill that takes practice and you learn as you go along. No 2 days are ever the same. And I found you are constantly evolving. It is worth it to have long and short-term goals in place that will give you a vision of what you need to do to get there. Make a plan and do not be afraid to change bits along the way. Can you unpack that a bit more by what you mean by all that?
Yeah, certainly I can. I mean, the problem-solving element of it, I think, is what I've learned from trying to run. We do run it, but you know, from not running a business ever in my life to suddenly running a business, is you can be doing something on your own, not having a problem in the world, and you get a phone call saying, sorry mate, your sheep are out, or sorry mate, something's come up, or this is out, I can't actually do this anymore. And all of a sudden you're like, well, that's great, but that's now stuffed me up for the plan that I had a plan to go and do so and so and so and so. And now I've got to think on the spot and figure this out pretty quick and get it sorted and get something else in place and it's just, it's always evolving and always changing, and there's just so much going on that like not everything is always going to go to plan. Certainly when livestock are concerned, nothing ever goes to plan. It's like, I want those sheep to go there, and the sheep go, you want us to go where?
Exactly. Well, I'll go over here, or I might die on the way as well, just in case. I might just collapse of exhaustion. Oh, I'm sorry.
Um,
Just to piss you off.
Yeah. So yeah, I had to learn very quickly to get good at problem solving and good at being flexible enough to go, oh, we made a plan and now that plan's not going to work. So I've got to change that plan and figure something out quick. And, you know, and thinking about things in a sort of a different way and being flexible and dynamic is, I think, what probably sets some people out from being good farmers and good business owners to maybe not quite so good. And I think a lot of that does just come down to your ability to be able to problem solve. So I thought that was a worthwhile thing putting in there, because I feel like that's probably one of the biggest bits of vital information that I've learned from the last two and a bit years, is that I had to get good at problem solving because stuff comes up.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of firefighting, isn't there? And it's and you have to be able to think on your feet.
Yeah, that's probably a good metaphor, actually. Firefighting, yeah, because it is. You put out one fire, and then somewhere over there another one gets lit.
Yeah,
and you're like, really? Come on, give me a break.
please. Yeah, I suppose actually, that's a good link into the next question, actually. So you're involved with the Farm Safety Foundation as a Yellow Wellies ambassador. Why is that important to you, and how did you first get involved?
Well, I got involved with them 2 years ago, I think, as part of their sort of Mind Your Head campaign, which is all about mental health in farming, which is a massive talking point now, which is fantastic because we should all be talking more about it. And I think especially as farmers, we're not very good at talking about anything unless it's to do with farming. So that's really, I've certainly seen a change in the last like 2 to 3 years, even with more conversation being had around that.
Yeah, definitely.
More sort of steps in place in terms of business and well-being, and it's more thought about now, I think, than it ever was. So yeah, I kind of just got involved in there just by sharing some of my thoughts and personal experiences, and off the back of that got quite a good reaction on social media. And off the back of that, they said, look, we're setting up this ambassador program, because I'd already talked, I'm quite sort of passionately involved in just general farm safety, because it's a big part of our daily lives, and pretty much everything we do is out there trying to kill us. So the last thing you want to do is not come home at night. So I've always tried to be as safety conscious as I can be personally. So, and they said, well, that's really great, and we really like your attitude towards like sharing like the mental health stuff as well. Would you like to be an ambassador? We're setting up this ambassador program. So I said, yeah, I'd love to be involved with you guys and do more sort of collaborative work, because I think this can only be a positive thing going forward. And then that led to me ending up doing a photo shoot for the RABI as well. So I'm now the poster boy for them.
I was going to say, I remember seeing you there now, actually. Okay, yeah, that's why. That is Matt.
And even now, there's one being shared about with just the back of my head sitting on a gate, and that's me as well.
Yeah.
But they wanted to revamp their posters and their website and stuff with some new photos and some up-to-date, some younger people, basically.
Okay.
And they put a plea out on Twitter asking for farmers to come and just model for an afternoon and just do a photo shoot.
Yep.
And I think perhaps from my days when I used to do acting and drama,
yeah, of course,
more adapt that kind of thing, because I sent them a message and they said, we haven't actually had any guys message us yet volunteering to come and do it. So they basically bit my hand off for me to go and do it. And yeah, the best bit was they said around at the end, they said, you're actually a really natural model. Have you ever thought of doing more of this? I was like, no, not really. I'll stick to farming.
Whole different career, yeah.
Farming model.
An interesting diversification.
Yeah. So there was that, and then every now and again they'll ring me up and say, "Oh, would you like to do so and so, or would you like to speak on telly about mental health?" Well, actually, that never happened. Actually, I was meant to do something on the BBC News about mental health and their new website they set up, which is like the online counselling thing, but it never actually went ahead, which was a shame. But yeah, they rang me up and were like, would you be willing to do this? Like I said to you earlier about the opportunities thing. I just say yes to stuff now, and then kind of figure it out later. Like, how am I going to do that? Where am I going to fit that in?
That's my approach to life as well.
Because
knowing when to say no is important, but I'm a big believer in definitely say yes in life.
Yeah, I was going to say when I was younger, I was much more of a no man. Yeah. It was always no, I'm not going to. Now I'm just like, give that a go, try that. Doesn't work. Absolutely. Doesn't matter. Doesn't come to anything. I mean, like this year, I've applied for the Tesco Future Farmers Academy thing.
Okay.
Because I know a few people that have done it, and they said it was really beneficial. Even if you don't want to supply Tesco's with something, it gives you an understanding of the supply chain, and you meet loads of different people. And I was like, from that perspective of where my business is going, obviously I supply everything myself, so I don't really want to start supplying a supermarket and stuff, because that defeats the object of my self-sufficiency supply chain is really small. And I mean, long term, I'd really love to be able to open my own farm shop, with like an on-farm butchery. So I can say literally, it's been butchered here. We sell it from here, and we kind of. I think we're going to end up getting to a point where we pretty much farm everything, because at the moment we have poultry, so we've got chickens, geese, and ducks. That we sell free-range eggs. This year we've gone out and bought 4 pigs, so we're going to have some pork available next year. We obviously do the lamb, and actually tomorrow we're heading off to a Hereford cattle sale to just have a look at a few cows, because
you won't just have a look.
We will, because we're going in the car. We're not taking a trailer.
Okay.
That's the guaranteed way not to bring something home is not take a checkbook and not take a trailer.
Just in case.
If I've ever gone anywhere with money and a trailer, I've always come home with something.
I thought you said you'd say yes and then work it out later.
No, we're not quite there yet. I mean, we're thinking in the next 2 years, maybe we might invest in some cows and start off. We basically want to go down the pedigree route. Cows, Hereford specifically, because they'll fit quite nicely into our more outdoor grass system. And I just really like Hereford beef, and I think the Angus is a great beef animal as well. But there's a lot of them, and there's not quite so many Herefords, and I don't know, tugs on my heartstrings a little bit to feel a bit sorry for not the big guy of the group, and Hereford cattle are just lovely cattle. They
are lovely, aren't they? They are.
Who wouldn't want to have a few Hereford cattle?
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean that'll probably be a case where we do go to a sale, or say go to a sale. We actually. I find personally I much prefer buying stock directly from a farmer, because you get to meet the farmer, you get to see his setup, you get a much better look at the stock and a chat to him about the way he farms, and it's a much more personal connection, I think, than buying something at a sale ring. And just well, that's your cow, there you go, load it up, and you might not even ever meet the previous owner. And I get that's the way that livestock farming has been for hundreds of years, but there's just something nice about being able to buy something direct from the farmer himself. So probably what we'll end up doing with the cows is we'll probably find somewhere that we like, and we'll say, when you've got some heifers for sale, we'll come down and we'll pick one out of your group of heifers, and we'll take it away straight from the farm. And then we'll figure that one out as we go along.
One thing I know that you did want to talk about was yours and Floss's, really, because I think she started it. The First Generation Farmers Facebook group. Tell me
Yeah,
and the listeners
she
about
she
that.
was she was having a chat with a friend about the challenges that we face, and we've faced this. And don't get me wrong, I'm a farmer's son and have agriculture in my blood, but there's an awful lot of people out there that aren't overly willing to help out young people. There are people out there that are, but they always felt like there were few and far between, and there never seemed to be anyone that you could turn to just to say, am I doing the right thing? Is this really a good idea? And that sort of sounding board for things. And they said, they sort of decided that actually a Facebook group might be a nice idea to sort of collect people like us, all these first generation farmers and new entrants, all these sorts of things, and collect them all in one group and say, okay, well, if you want a sounding board, there's now a group here, and you can just reach out. And it's the idea of it is that it is a non-hostile place. Everyone has to be friendly and respectful to people. It's not like other farming forum groups and stuff on Facebook that can get quite nasty, and there can be people in there that put awfully nasty comments, and it's kind of, you shouldn't do that, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, we don't want that. We want it to be a positive environment where if someone doesn't know something, and even if it's quite basic, doesn't what do I do about foot rot? How do I stop this? Why have I got this problem? That there might be someone in the group that's done that, dealt with it, and knows a solution to it, and can say, I've dealt with foot rot. Here's what I did, and try that and see if that works. And it's actually now developed into there are regional WhatsApp groups now around the country. So we've got a southeast one, an East Anglian one, a west one, and a northern one has just been set up as well. Fantastic. So we covered every region now in the UK with a WhatsApp group. And in fairness, the Facebook group isn't just UK based. We've got international members as well. So there's a few in there from, they don't make up a very big majority of the group, but there are people in there from America, Australia, New Zealand, another country as well, India, I think, as well, somewhere.
Fantastic.
So far it's gone from strength to strength, and has led to things like now the AHDB are involved and are actually going to put together special workshops for the first generation farmers group. So that literally started out from just an idea that my wife had and a conversation with somebody, and she started the Facebook group.
Fantastic. It's how a lot of great things start. I think. Just start small, and you never know where things lead.
No, exactly. I really can't believe where it's got to now. I think she said to me they've got 1,100 members now in the group.
Wow.
In about a year. So
fantastic. So how do listeners find that group? What do they search for?
If they search for first generation farmers and put in a request to join the group, because it is only it is a request only group. Yep. Just so that we don't get kind of spam and that sort of thing joining in. What we don't want is it to be a place where people go on and look at all these stock pen things that I can advertise, and it's just full of adverts for stuff. That's not really what it's for. It's very much a group for sharing opportunities and struggles and triumphs. We actively encourage people to, even if it's something small, like I had my first pig sent to the abattoir today. That's what we want people, to celebrate those things and put it out to the group and say, look what I did, and everyone goes, yay, well done. That's fantastic. Yeah. Because those things should be triumphed. Otherwise, people will just get discouraged if they're not, if they're not pushed to make time to celebrate these things, really, even if they are seemingly insignificant to somebody that sends 2,000 pigs a week to slaughter. To him, one person sending one pig to an abattoir is nothing. But those, like you said, small things can lead to bigger things.
Yeah.
So that's really what the group is about.
Grand. We're going to start to wrap things up, and we always finish the podcast with the same two questions. So I'm going to ask you those now. The first is, Matt, if you have a message for the public, what would it be?
Don't get sucked in by the current media campaign and government campaign that eat less meat will save the planet. That isn't the case from a farmer's perspective. From the farmer's perspective, what we would rather is that people eat better quality meat, because on where that meat actually comes from, like I was saying about my sustainable lamb and the fact that it's got such a low carbon footprint in terms of how I produce it, there's plenty of people that do the same thing that I do. And I think consumers are waking up to that fact and realizing that there's a direct link between their buying habits and, kind of where the supply of stuff comes from. But yeah, I think in terms of sort of supply chains and that kind of thing, like looking at food labels and going, actually, where has it been grown and produced? Because there's a lot of falsification that comes with that as well. So you have to be careful.
And finally, a message for your fellow farmers.
Yeah, see, that's a difficult one. I would say don't discount a lack of experience for necessarily what might be made up with enthusiasm. There is a growing number of younger people that really are buzzed about the future of food production and agriculture, which is fantastic to see. But what I don't want to happen is there to be a sort of a loss of skills and knowledge, in the fact that obviously the overwhelming majority of farmers are sort of, the average age is 59, and most of them are probably quite a bit older than that. So it's like you've got this sort of buzz of young people that want to get involved in it, and then older people that maybe want to retire and get away from it. It's like, well, we don't want there to be a loss of that knowledge of the land and its people and its workings, and the history of it all is such an integral part of farming as a whole that I really don't want that to be caught up in this whole, one thing that worries me is the DEFRA's lump scheme payment thing to get farmers to retire, because they seem to think it's going to create opportunity for young people, and I'm quite fearful that it will do the exact opposite, that there will be farmers that will take it, leave, and their knowledge and history and experience will just be lost with it, and we'll never get that back.
Interesting point to leave it on, I think. Matt, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been really fascinating hearing your story, and I wish you the absolute best of luck with building your business forward, because I think you definitely got the drive to really take things forward in an exciting way. So good luck, and thanks for coming on the show.
I was going to say, I'm an ideas man. Floss is grounding for, she sort of pulls me down and goes, no, hold on, get off your balloon, come back.
You need both sides, definitely.
Yeah. So no, thanks very much for having me, Ben. It's been brilliant. Great talking to you.
Been a pleasure. Thank you very much for listening as well. I will see you next time. I haven't actually yet finalized a guest for next week, but we will be back next week. Thanks for listening, and have a great week. mind
That's the
boggler at the
problem we've all
moment.
got is there's so many things to think about at the moment.
Yeah, and spend money on.
Yeah, and what's coming in over the next few years, and how do we balance what goes out and what comes in?
Yeah. Don't worry, right. It's exciting. I'm actually generally enjoying the process. I think anyone who enjoys taking a few risks and also because you can generally everything here is about positive change forward. And I know there's I was talking to a couple of farmers earlier in the week who are literally playing the strategy of waiting to see where elms are going, and I mean, fine, but it's a risky strategy in my mind.
You're going to have a lot to
do what
catching
you
up
can.
to.
Yeah, do what you can at the moment.